Swamin itinamine namaste Saraswate deve Gauravani pracharine Nirvishesha sanjavadi Paschatya desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. If you sit over here, then the next person that's kind of come in is going to sit right where you're sitting. You got a back problem. Oh. I've got a knee problem, so I commiserate. Hare Krishna, you brought your own drum. Thank you. You should have heard this one, little toy drum. So continuing part 4, we have been discussing personalities from Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday, we discussed Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, and then the 3 before that, Narad Muni, going back, Sukadev Goswami, Maharishi Parikshit. So Bhismadev, a big section of Canto 1, Chapter 8 is dedicated to Grandfather Bhishma. Of course, the scene here is that Grandfather Bhishma is passing, but we're not going to so much focus on that. We're going to focus, there's another, the Mighty Warrior. It's a separate class. This was a little bit shorter than yesterday. Going back to the boyhood and who was Bhishmadev in his previous life. So Bhishmadev was the 8th son of Shantanu. Looking around to see our younger generation people, see if you know those stories, right? Okay. 8th son of Maharishi Shantanu and Ganga Devi. But he wasn't known as Bhishma. He got that name later. His childhood name was Deva Vrata. Deva Vrata. And as the one surviving the 8th, because the first 7 sons were tossed back in the Ganga. Interesting history. So he secured this name by his father. His father gave him this name when he gave up his title of becoming the next king, and not only that, he took this vow that he would not marry in life. And so when his father heard this vow, he was called Bhishma, one of a terrible vow. I think it's a nice vow, not a terrible vow. Terrible vow. And my dear son, you were so stern in keeping your promise, because Bhishma was known as one who didn't break his promise except for one, because Krishna tricked him. My dear son, you are stern in keeping your promise. I give you this benediction that you will never die unless you desire. So he desired when he was ready to leave and seeing Krishna, and he left because he had this benediction. So apparently his father was a very powerful person. Just his word. He didn't have to die unless he so desired. Who can give a benediction like that? And it sticks. He, in his previous life, was one of the 8 Vasus. And according to Bhagavad Gita, the opulences of the Absolute chapter, one of the vibhutis of Krishna, from Narayana, Indra was born. From Narayana, the 8 Vasus were born. From Narayana, the 11 Rudras are born. From Narayana, the 12 Adityas are born. And that's Narayana is one of Krishna's expansions. So that Narayan. Canto 6, Chapter 6. The sons of Vasu were known as the 8 Vasus. Nice name. Just hear their names from me: Drona, Prana, Dhruva, Arka, Agni, Dosha, Vastu, and Vibhavasu. And that's the little different list. Madhvacharya indicates, quoting in Canto 7, Madhvacharya says there are 3 kinds of demigods: Adityas, Vasus, and Rudras. Same from the list up above, Bhagavad Gita. Beneath whom there are other demigods like Maruts and Sadyas. So here's the 8 Vasus by name. It's a different list than we saw the previous list. And here's what the Vasus are. So the fire god, Agni, that's one of the Vasus. Goddess of earth, Prithvi, she's one of the Vasus. Vayu, the wind god, is one of the Vasus. Antariksha, the god of space, is one of the Vasus. Aditya, the sun god, is one of the Vasus. Chandrama, the moon god. Nakshatra, the god of the nakshatras or asterisms. And Dyo, the god of the luminous sky. So this Dyo later became Bhishma. Bhishma, formerly Dyo, the leader of the Vasus. So amongst the 8, there's one who's the leader of the 8. And Dyo was the leader of the 8. And he made a boo-boo. He offended Vashishta. Don't offend Vashishta, you might have a problem. He had a big problem. Vashishta Muni lived in one of the forests on Mount Meru. My Krishna. The reason is just saving space for people who might come after you. It's okay. Okay. Mount Meru. What's Mount Meru? That big one? The big golden mountain? On Mount Meru. He was adept in the practice of austerity and meditation with the help of Kamadhenu, his Kamadhenu cow. Kamadhenu, wish-fulfilling cow. He performed sacrifices to please the Supreme Being. He was a Vaishnava. And along the way, one day, the 8 Vasus came, headed by Prithvi, to that forest, roaming about with their wives. The Vasus entered the hermitage of Vashishta Muni. Now, I don't know how Prithvi, who is female, had a wife. So don't ask me that question, because the answer is I don't know. But that's the way the text reads, so I'm just reading the text. They spotted the celestial cow named Nandini. One of the Vasus, whose name was Dyo, then informed his wife, "This cow belongs to the eminent sage Vashishta, and it is said that the mortal who drinks the milk of this cow remains unchanged for 10,000 years." Very special milk. Very special cow. And so his wife said, I want that cow. I have a very dear friend named Jitavati, who is the daughter of the sage Usrina. I wish to take this cow and calf as a present for her. And she didn't take no for an answer. It belongs to the property of a Brahmana. Sorry. But, she was persisting and persisting. On being repeatedly petitioned by his beautiful wife, Dio, along with his brothers, abducted the Kamadhenu cow and her calf, stealing the property of a Brahmana. Very bad. And stealing is very bad. And stealing the property of a Brahmana is very bad. Stealing the property of a Shishta Muni. Whoa. Big problem. And because Vishishta is all-knowing, sure enough, by his mystic powers, he knew that the cow and the calf had been taken away by the Vasus. He cursed them to be born on earth as ordinary mortals. So now these personalities are residents of the celestial region, but not for long because they were cursed to go to the mortal region. When they heard of this curse, they went to Vishishta, tried to pacify him, fell at his feet, made different supplications, and finally Vishishta gave the following. This curse is the suitable punishment to rectify your enjoying mentality. You will be freed from it shortly after your earthly birth. However, your brother Diao, who actually stole my cow, shall have to domicile on earth for a long period of time. Diao, though living on earth, shall not marry and have children. He will, however, be a man of kingly virtue and will know the essence of the Holy Scriptures. He will be an obedient servitor to his father, but will have to live without female companionship. That sounds nice to me. The Vasus then begged the benediction from Ganga. Begged the benediction from Ganga to cast them into the water of the Ganges immediately upon their taking birth. And the reason for that is the Ganges has its origin in the celestial region. So by dipping in the Ganges down here, they could ascend to the celestial region again, very quickly. That Dew had to stay on earth to fulfill the curse of Vashishta. So what's going to happen is the 8 sons of Ganga and Santanu, 7 of them were tossed into the Ganges. But when the 8th, he objected, and so that was a problem. Now that's the background of Bhishma or Deva Vrata, and then here's a little bit of background. Mahabharata has backstories and backstories to those backstories, and it gets a little confusing sometimes. So, in his previous birth, Santanu was a king in the line of Ikshvaku. And there are different spellings of his name, Mahavisha or Mahavisha. Sounds similar. Like Brindavan and Brindavan, like that. Desiring residence in heaven, the king in the Ikshvaku dynasty performed great sacrifices to satisfy Indra, and as a result ascended to Indra's abode. at the end of his life. But he had a little problem. Once, in an assembly of the gods in Brahmaloka, Mahavishya saw the divinely beautiful Ganga. A wind came and blew her garments, and others looked away, but he didn't look away. He looked at her. Mahavishya continued to gaze at her, captivated by her beauty. Lusty. For this rudeness, Brahma cursed him as follows: "You will again be born on earth," because they know where he came from, "but you'll return here after one life." So that tells us what the destination of Santanu was when he left this world, because that's always a question that comes at the end of classes. Take my word for it. Given his choice as to who would be his father on earth, King Pratipa was selected by Mahavishya. So who gets to select their father at birth? But he did. And something a little bit about Pratipa. Here in the earthly realm, Ganga became attracted to King Pratipa near a Ganga River valley. King Pratipa made a benediction to Ganga that she would become the son, not yet born son, of his child. In course of time, Shantanu was born to King Pratipa. That's who Shantanu was, the son of Pratipa, and before that. When turning over his kingdom to his son, Pratipa gave explicit instruction to Shantanu regarding a celestial maiden who would become his queen. Who's that celestial maiden? Ganga. Meanwhile, Ganga Devi had made a promise to the 8 Vasus who were cursed by Vashishta, at least 7 of them, combined with Vashishta's request to Ganga. So their request was, shortly after we're born, please toss us in the Ganga. So she had agreed to that request. Ganga Devi received a promise from Santanu, and Santanu became attracted. Woo, woo, woo. Please marry me. And she said something that any married lady would like to have her husband agree to. "You never address me with harsh words, and whatever I want to do, you won't interfere with it." Not bad. And it was woo, 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 yes. So all the 8 Vasus were born to Ganga Devi. So one after the next, he watched as the child, the newborn child, was taken by Ganga Devi and tossed into the Ganga. But he said nothing because he gave his word that she would disappear if he did. So he did no objection, no objection, no objection. By the time it was child number 8, he had objection. Wait a minute, stop, stop, stop. And so she immediately disappeared with the child number 8 in tow. Now, the story, of course, the story doesn't end there. She went to the hermitage of Vishishta and Brahaspati. She entrusted her son to be trained by them in all sorts of knowledge. So the boy's name is Deva Vrata. And this went on for quite some time. And then not only they taught him in scriptures, but Parashuram gave him his military instruction. So he's got really good teachers. He's got a really good background of, he was one of the Vasus. So he's all ready to go. But his father hadn't met him. So 32 years later, she introduced, here's your son. Hi, Bo. See you later. A son who he hadn't seen for all this period of time. And they lived together as father and son. So the eldest son, this is important to recall this piece of information, the eldest son of the king becomes the next king by law, by tradition, and by law. So he's trained by great teachers and by Parshuram to have the ability to do what he had the ability to do. Now, later, this is not what's going to come in this section, but at a later point in time, his guru, Parshuram was his military guru. Parshuram ordered him to do something. Remember? He wanted him to, Parshuram, wanted his disciple, Bhishma, to marry. And Bhishma said, I've taken a vow, not marry. And if you continue to order me to do what I've already taken a vow to not do, then we'll have to have battle. So there's some philosophical discussion. Are there circumstances, here there's one, because Bhishma is knower of the Vedas, are there circumstances where a disciple can deliberately, knowingly refuse an instruction, and refuse an instruction is one of them. Reasons is if it's against Shastra. So he said no. So that's another class. The great hero, the great fighter, Bhishma, the mighty warrior. But we're not going to be able to do that during this visit because there's other things planned for the rest of the visit. So they met 32 years later. And then on the scene, so he Santanu, still doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a queen. And there's a prospective queen, and her name is Satyavati. Now, we heard already, so this is something we heard yesterday. We're hearing it again today. There are two representations. One of those representations is from Srimad Bhagavatam, nothing lengthy, but just in this purport, 9:22:20. Satyavati was actually the daughter of Uparichara Vasu by the womb of a fisherwoman known as Matsya Garbha. Later, Satyavati was raised by a fisherman. That's Bhagavatam purport, no details. And there's a lot of details in Mahabharata. So some of you that are here were not with us yesterday, correct? Anyone that's here wasn't with us yesterday? You were all with us. Oh, you were not here. Okay. 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 So this is a repeat for most of the people in the room. But so there's no detail given in this Bhagavatam purport. It's just Prabhupada says what Prabhupada says or writes what he writes. In Mahabharata, there's a very lengthy description of Uparichara Vasu. And Uparichara Vasu had pleased Lord Indra. Lord Indra gave him this chariot that can fly in the sky, and he went all over the place in the sky in this chariot. So he was then given this kind of nickname or second name, Upari Chara. He traveled in the sky at high places, Upari Chara. And he, as the painting shows, he had a dear wife, and his dear wife is Girika. And Girika and his wife were very attracted and attached to each other. So on one particular occasion, he, Upari Chara, was in a forest. And when he was in the forest, it doesn't say exactly what he was doing, hunting, presumably, or something like that. He saw two animals, doesn't say what species of animals, but they were engaging in union with one another, male, female. And he became sexually agitated just seeing the scene in the forest, and he lost semen. And with that semen, he decided, it's like very complicated, he decided that it shouldn't be wasted. So he made an arrangement to place that semen on a leaf and somehow had a conversation with a falcon and asked the falcon, please take this semen of mine to my wife, Garika, and she then can have a son or a daughter, a child. So the falcon agreed. There's no description about how he was able to have a conversation with a falcon. And off he goes, zoom, zoom, zoom. And as the falcon was flying in the air, there was a hawk that saw the falcon. The hawk started to attack the falcon in midair. And as they were fighting midair, the leaf with the semen on it fell and fell over the river Jamuna. And in the river Jamuna, there was a fish. The backstory of the fish was an apsara who had been cursed by a brahmana to take birth on earth as a fish. So the fish, seeing this thing floating in the ocean, in the river, swallowed it and became pregnant. So that which was meant for his wife became the pregnancy of a fish. So in the fish, according to the Mahabharata narration, 10 months later, the fish was caught by a fisherman. And when the fisherman brought the fish back to, clean the fish or strip the fish, he found a male and a female child inside the fish. Pretty uncomfortable inside the fish, a male and a female child. So he put two and two together and said, this is the male and female child belong to Upachari Vasu. So he gave the Matsya was the name of the male child, and the king, the local king, accepted it. But the female child, he decided, she smelled like a fish. So she, the daughter, was given to a fisherman. She was beautiful in appearance, but she had just bad fishy smell. So Matsya Gandha became her name. Matsya Gandha, born from the fish named Matsya Garbha. So when the fisherman, there's further detail in Mahabharata. It's still intricate, involved. The fisherman thought, and his wife thought, there's some details. If she takes up the occupation, she's a beautiful young girl, then somehow she may get some benediction, and she may be, with that benediction, be able to have a good husband. That was a nice wish. And so that's what she did. Matsya Gandha took up the occupation of ferrying people across the river Jamuna, because that's where they lived. That's the fishermen. lived near the bank of the river Jamuna. And one occasion, Parashamuni wanted to cross, and he saw the lady with the boat. And so, of course, there's different versions of Mahabharata. Ask Sri Dayananda Maharaj about it sometime. There's too many versions. Too many versions. Anyway, in a standard version is, as he's in the boat, he did some astronomical and astrological calculation. As they're crossing the river Jamuna, he calculated that now is a time for an appearance of an incarnation of the Supreme Lord to make his appearance. So what to do? He asked Satyavati, how'd you like to be the mother of an incarnation of the personality of Godhead? And she was reluctant. And, here we are in the middle of a river, and how's this going to happen? So Parashara has mystic powers. And one of those mystic powers, he said, no problem. I can create a fog that no one can see through. And I can create an island where we can have union and the child can be conceived, and the child will immediately be born or appear in an adult feature, and you won't lose your virginity. 3 promises. Interesting. 3 promises. So she agreed. Now, there are some versions that don't, and some versions that do say that he gave a specific benediction. Not only you have a great son, and he'll be very famous, but that in the future she will have a son who will become the king. So she's a fisherman's daughter. She's an unmarried lady, but she, this benediction. So some places don't say that. Some places do say that. Yesterday I mentioned Parashamuni said. And when she came back home and said, Daddy, guess what happened today? When he smelled that she didn't have that fishy smell anymore, she smelled the Yojana Ganda, that for 8 miles distance, there was a fragrance from her body that was very, very attractive. So he understood this, she had this blessing that he was hoping might happen, and sure enough, it happened. So one fine day, the king was passing by, and as he was, of course, traveling through his kingdom, and he smelled this incredible fragrance, and he followed the fragrance and found Satyavati, who was now not only very beautiful but very fragrant. And he asked the fisherman's or the fisherman's father, Satyavati's father, for his daughter's hand in marriage. And much to his surprise, the fisherman said no. Wait a minute, I'm the king and you're a fisherman. I'm asking for your daughter in marriage and you're saying no. And he said, well, there's a condition in which you can marry my daughter. And that condition is that her son will become the king. And that was a problem because he already has a son, and the firstborn son becomes the king, and he's a follower of Dharma. And so what to do. So he went back home and he became morose because Cupid's arrow struck and he wanted to marry Satyavati. And grandfather or Deva Vrata noticed that his father was morose, and he asked the ministers, what's going on with my father? And because they knew the whole story, they explained the whole story to him. So immediately, Deva Vrata went to the fisherman and said, "Can my father marry your daughter?" And the fisherman said, "No. Why not? Because she should marry in such a way that she will have a king as her son. But you're already the eldest son, and so your father can't marry my daughter." And he said, "Okay, I'll take a vow that I'll not become king. Can my father marry your daughter now?" "No." "Really? Why?" The answer is, if you have a son and your son is born before her son is born, then your son will become the next king. No problem. I'll not marry. It was already told by Vashishta anyways. I won't marry. So I won't marry. Okay, your father can marry my daughter. And then two sons were born of Santanu and Satyavati. And it gets, part of the intrigue of Mahabharata that these two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, circumstances happened. This is another complex story of Mahabharata, but those two sons died at an early age, so there was no heir to the throne. Santanu and Satyavati and her son would become the next king, but they died early, so they didn't become the next kings. Bhishma had taken the vow he would become king. Here's the family line. You see in the center, there's Satyavati and Santanu and their two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. That's the whole Mahabharata story. I mean, you all know the Mahabharata stories. Most of you know the Mahabharata stories. So Bhishma made an arrangement for marriage of Vichitravirya. And he went all the way to South India, brought back three sisters. One of the three sisters, Amba, she said, this isn't very nice. I wanted to marry Shalva. Shalva? Shalva. Shalva. No, you can go back and marry Shalva. When she went back to marry Shalva, he said, "You've been touched by another man. So, no, I won't marry you." So she went back, said, You marry me, Bhishma. I've taken a vow. I can't marry you. Then it's a whole complication. So she went and did austerities. So she get back at Bhishma. And it's a long story. Long story. Mahabharata story. But the two, Ambika and Ambalika, were then had agreement to become mothers. It's very, very involved. It's another class to give all that whole history. You know the history? Mahabharata history? Yes. So what did she do? She asked Bhishma to produce children with these two ladies, queens. And uh, he said, "Mother, I've taken a vow. But you have another son, remember?" So when Vyasadeva was born of Parshuram and Satyavati, Vyasadeva left shortly after he was born, is in an adult stature, and said, "But don't worry, if at any point in time you need me, just call. Call my name and I'll come immediately." And that's what she did. Satyavati called Vyasa's name, and he came immediately. And he had been engaged in austerities, and he was not clean and not smelling so good, and looked weird, looked very disheveled, and and tense and fierce. So that's how these three sons, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidur, were born as the sons of Vyasadeva and these two queens and their maidservant as the heirs to the throne to fulfill the prophecy. That's over on the right side. Over on the left side, there's Ganga and Santanu had as their son Bhishmadev. So that covers the whole lineage. Now, something that's well known about Bhishmadev, at least it should be well known for followers of the Srimad Bhagavatam, according to a nice description by Yamaraj. Who's Yamaraj? He's the Lord of Death. So the circumstance was, Canto 6, the story of Ajamila. When Ajamila was ready to be taken to the court of Yamaraj for punishment for all of his sinful activities, they confronted the just dying Ajamila, and had ropes around his subtle body and were going to take him to the court of Yamaraj, and they were stopped. It's a very nice section, very instructive section, very important for the Hare Krishna movement devotees, because the Yamadutas describe the principle of Dharma, that even his calling of his son, Narayana, he named his son Narayana because before Ajamila became fallen and degraded, he was the son of a Brahmana and a worshipper of Narayana. So he named one of his sons, born of a prostitute, Narayana. So when the Yamadutas came, he panicked and called the son, like as if little baby, little boy Narayana, his son, is going to save him. So then there's the whole discussion about the chanting of the holy name, Namabas and Shuddhanaim, the whole very, very detailed description, worth becoming familiar with again and again and again, because of the power of the holy name and how it can save one from greatest of dangers. So when the Yamadutas were stopped, they were very puzzled, because who stops death? There's no set. They have never had that experience. Who can stop death? So they left, and they went back to the court of Yamaraj and wanted an explanation. What's going on? Are there two lords? That would be really messy. Then there'd be conflict. There can't be two lords. So who's Lord? Are you not the Lord? And he listened to their questions, and then he cites this verse: the 12 authorities that know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one of them is Grandfather Bhishma. Celebrated verse: Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Kumara Kapilo Manu. That's 6. Plada Janako Bhishmo Valir Vyasiki Vayam. Vayam is himself, Yamaraj. And then the other 11. And so Grandfather Bhishma is one of the great authorities. And we're going to end quickly. Grandfather Bhishma, was trained by Vashishta and Brihaspati, thank you, and therefore he was trained properly as a Vaishnava. He was a devotee of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. And so there's details that will come in a separate class, a separate topic. He enjoyed chivalrous rasa. Looking around the room, about anybody here, we all should be at least somewhat familiar with the topic of rasa, because it's a very essential book, Nectar of Devotion, which is a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, and the topic is rasa. So there's 5 primary rasas and another 7 secondary rasas. 5 plus 7 equals generally 12. So there's 12 rasas in the topic, and mixtures of rasas, and compatible and incompatible mixtures of rasas, and so forth. Very detailed description from Rupa Goswami's writings, given to him by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the topic, on the rasa topic. So one of those 7 secondary rasas is chivalry. And Grandfather Bhishma was expert in giving. She's waiting for me to not look. Grandfather Bhishma was very expert in, because chivalry at any rasa, it means 2. There's an exchange of emotion or taste or transcendental feeling. Of course, there's mundane rasa and there's transcendental rasa. And then in the transcendental rasa, Grandfather Bhishma, he had a service of giving happiness to Krishna by chivalrous rasa. And therefore, he was on the opposite side. When it came to the Kurukshetra battle, one of the reasons, there's some other reasons, he was on the wrong side. I mean, against the Pandavas. And how is it he was against the Pandavas? One answer is rasa, to be engaged in combat with Krishna, knowing that Krishna would be victorious, but he gave him a good tussle. So Krishna enjoyed it. Here's a second reason, and it's an important reason, because he was a man that kept his vows. He, Bhishma, was knower of Dharma. He knew the skullduggery of Duryodhana and his brothers. He knew it very well. They were bad, and he knew it very well. And yet he fought on their side. How is that? The answer is he had given a promise to his father, Santanu, that although I won't become king, I'll give my support to the one who is the king. And I keep my vow. So it was with heavy heart that he was going to fight on the side of this bad fellow, the opponent of the virtuous Pandavas. When he was asked by Duryodhana to be the commander in chief, there were 2 conditions, not just on our side, commander in chief. One of those conditions is I won't fight the Pandavas because they're virtuous and they're protected by Krishna. So I won't fight. Don't ask me. I won't do it. And the other condition was I won't fight along with Karna. He fights or I fight, but I'm not going to fight with Karna. And though Karna was miffed, Karna he was in the get back spirit like Duryodhana. He had friendship with Duryodhana and so forth, but I won't fight with Karna. Don't ask that. So it was agreed. He is the commander in chief. And, he's practically invincible. He showed it already that he was invincible even for Parshuram. So who can defeat Bhishma? He's our commander in chief. Bhishmadev knew well that Lord Krishna is the original Narayana. His worshipable deity was four-handed Narayana, but he knew that the four-handed Narayana is the plenary expansion of Lord Krishna because he's an educated Vaishnav. Indirectly, he desired Lord Sri Krishna to manifest himself in this four-handed feature of Narayana. It's like this depiction of, and you see in the painting, there's Krishna because he desired it. Krishna showed his forearm form. His grandfather Bhishma was lying on the bed of arrows. Krishna showed what he wanted. As a great fighter in the battle of Kurukshetra, he was relishing the relation of Krishna in the chivalrous humor. So this is the chivalrous rasa of the seven. One of them is chivalry. The fighting was an exchange of transcendental pleasure between Lord Krishna and Bhismadev. So because Krishna wanted to protect Arjuna, sometimes Krishna would move this way and move that way, and grandfather Bhishma's arrows would come and they'd pierce Krishna's chest. And of course, Krishna doesn't have a material body. According to the Upanishads, he has no veins, but to speak of a material body. But blood would come. And when the blood would show, grandfather Bhishma liked it. In chivalrous rasa. And we don't like this. Anyway, a Vaishnava doesn't like to see blood from anyone, but to speak of blood from the personality of Godhead, his worshipful deity. His throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft rose upon him, or the biting of a beloved is another expression that's used. So this whole topic is the other topic that I'm not going to do tonight, but another time when I visit. There's a schedule. I do plan to visit again. And the dates are identified and probably going to be adjusted a little bit because somebody requested some adjustment. But we'll come again and we'll just continue on this theme till the series is completed. We'll go back, maybe it'll stop. Didn't like that picture. Okay. So that's a little background on one of the personalities from Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, he's well known not only in first canto, but Mahabharata as well. So my experience with this group of devotees is you often have a lot of questions. So I thought to make a shorter class this evening and have time for discussion. See if there's some questions or comments. I see one hand up already. Over here.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I think it's first of all appreciate you bringing uh, so many different personalities and incidences into one person and get and very variegatedness presentation.
Mm.
And I I wanted to maybe just share a few I think what I read from Srimad Bhagavatam on some of the main personalities that is embedded in this presentation. One is Shantanu, King Shantanu.
Yeah.
I remember maybe it's Canto 9, some chapter talks about Shantanu has a very interesting feature. Everyone who is touched by his hand will become youthful,
Mm.
and that's kind of the way he makes his people, his citizens, very happy
I
living in his kingdom. And another thing I see the other one, the personality of Upachari Vasu, you mentioned yesterday and today mentioned again. I remember he is uh one of, I think he's one of the, maybe at the grandfather level of um, Jarasandha. So he is a descendant of King Kuru, uh, Kurukshetra, the king of Kurukshetra,
yeah.
and uh, he is one of the descendants from that king, and he is the kind of the grandfather level of Jarasandha. So he is the uh,
Magadha.
interesting. Is kind of because you mentioned Satyavati is his kind of biological daughter, and all those personalities in that family is connected in some way or other. Right.
We I I'm sure you're right. I'd like to go back and check there's in the ninth canto Bhagavatam, there's a lot of kings that are mentioned because it's a lineage. It's the ninth canto Bhagavatam. This is general for everyone here. The line of kings from the Surya dynasty, line of kings from the Chandra dynasty, leading up to 10th canto. Krishna appears in the Chandra dynasty, or the Moon dynasty. And Kuru is one of the kings in the Chandra dynasty, and as I recall, and uh, there's a whole list of personalities, and the way that the structure of the ninth canto is they mention the names after name after name after name after name, and don't tell too much about the names, but list them so there's continuity of the lineage. Now you're indicating in that ninth canto list as a descendant of Kuru is Uparicharu Vasu. Yes?
Yes,
I remember that. Lots of things I don't remember. Okay.
and then a question. Maybe I think part of uh, we Bhishmadev is one of the eight Vasus, and in this manifestation is kind of all the seven Vasus, eight Vasus got cursed,
Yeah.
and they get they have to be born in this earthly realm and get back to the celestial realm. And I remember the uh, the incidents you mentioned here is they offended Vashishta,
Yes.
and Vashishta cursed them,
Yeah.
and then uh, Vashishta also later on became a teacher of Bhishmadev.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, like the relationship is kind of humorous because
Yeah.
Vashishta,
Well, he's not a spoiled person. You offended me. Get lost. That's not the kind of person he is. He wanted to the punishment stood because it was appropriate punishment to teach them a lesson. It wasn't like slap them because he just was an angry grumpy fellow. It was to teach them a lesson. So he wasn't, in other words, he wasn't holding it against him. It was to teach him a lesson. And it doesn't say otherwise against it either. But, when he said he'll have to stay, perhaps he knew later on I'll become a teacher. It doesn't say one way or the other. But these munis and rishis and seers can often see into the future, and therefore they offer what they offer. They say what they say and do what they do because they know what the future holds. So it's quite okay that he accepted him as a student.
But yeah, adding one more intricacy here is I remember Uddhava is also called by Krishna as one of the Vasus.
Mm.
And seems Uddhava is freed from this intricacy of the Vasus offending Vashishta Lila.
Well, there's different vasus at different periods of time. So you're indicating why is his name not listed as one of the 8 vasus? That's not what you're indicating.
Like Uddhava is one of the Vasus, but he is not yet involved in this whole
Yeah, so
incident.
because he's not one of the 8. Because it's a change of vasus. You know,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know.
So it's like the post.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yes. You go through that list, and there's the post, there's the fire god, sun god, moon god, and then there's someone occupying the post, and then along with that title of the moon god, sun god, etc., there's a vasu title. So they have the name of the person, and then the post of the demigod, and then this capacity of vasu. And they're powerful, and they can travel as personalities. They can travel about together. They don't just stay in the moon, or stay in the sun, or stay in the antariksha, nakshatra, this twinkle in the sky or something. They do different things. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna. Bhai. Um, there's a lot to learn from Bhishmadev's life.
Mm,
Looking at his very long and very complex life,
mm.
uh, for a sadhaka like us, what are the things which we can learn? What we can look at it like? What are the features from the lessons learned perspective? What is the purpose?
For you and me,
Yeah.
sadhakas, don't offend Vashishta. Don't take the property of a Brahmin. And be truthful. And because because he was such a virtuous man, although he got this misfortune because of the opposite, he's a virtuous man. And one of the virtues is you give your word and you keep your word. And he did, with the one exception. We know the one exception. Krishna made him break his promise. If there's no other question, I'll tell that Bhishma broke his promise story. Huh? You all know the story. You know the story. Yes, you do. Something like the 12th, 11th, or 12th day of the battle, Duryodhana went to the tent of grandfather Bhishma and said, "You're not fighting to your capacity. You could destroy the whole army, but you're not even trying because you're partial to the Pandavas. But you're our commander-in-chief, so it's your duty. You perform your duty." Appealing to his dharma side. And so, knowing that Krishna would protect the Pandavas, because he already had taken this. Remember, he had this pledge: "I'll become commander in chief, but don't ask me to fight with the Pandavas." So here's the 5 arrows with which I'll kill the 5 Pandavas tomorrow. Now, is that breaking a promise? Sounds like it. Might take it as breaking his promise, but it wasn't exactly a promise. He just said, "Don't ask me to fight with the Pandavas because they're virtuous. You don't understand virtue. That's your problem. But I understand virtue, and I won't fight with those that are virtuous. And plus, they're protected by Krishna. So don't ask me." So he came and asked him. He didn't say specifically, "Can you fight the Pandavas?" But if you remove the Pandavas, the battle is over. Because the Yadhyaracharachi Shestas. There's many great heroes, but they're so. Here's 5 arrows. You come greet me every morning. And when you come to greet me every morning and pay your respects. Bring those 5 arrows. And with these 5 arrows tomorrow, I'll kill the Pandavas. And omniscient Krishna knew of that little exchange. And so Krishna then reminded Arjuna, "Remember when you saved the life of Duryodhana? He was in this fight with the Gandharvas and they were getting the best of him. And Arjuna came in, stepped in, and protected you. And, the Gandharvas went away. Duryodhana knew you saved his life and volunteered. You didn't ask, but he volunteered. You take something of commitment from me." No, I don't. I don't I don't give protection to get something. That's not a Kshatriya code. So, no thanks. Krishna reminded him, said, "Now you should ask for that something." And don't ask for anything but those 5 arrows, and he'll know which 5 arrows you're referring to. Go right now. So that night, and he gave him the 5 arrows. So when Duryodhana came the next morning to greet grandfather Bhishma, didn't have the 5 arrows. Bhishma asked him, "Where are those arrows?" "Oh, last night, Arjuna came." So then grandfather Bhishma did some quick math. 2 plus 2 equals 4. This is Krishna's doing. So Krishna, I who have never broken my promise, Krishna has made me break my promise because I gave a promise, these 5 arrows. So I'm going to make Krishna break his promise. And that what will make Krishna break his promise is either Krishna will have to fight and to protect Arjuna, or I'm kill Arjuna before the sun sets. You know that story. Yeah. So Krishna protected Arjuna and broke his promise to protect his devotee. And grandfather Bhishma knew he would do that. So he took his vow knowing that Krishna would do what Krishna did. But it would done in a chivalrous way because they have chivalrous rasa. So Krishna, our grandfather Bhishma broke his vow once, and he made Krishna break his vow. That's the history. Anyone else? Yes,
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I will.
Thank you for the class, and I'm happy to hear that you'll come back again.
Well,
Um,
Krishna permitting, we have a plan, and Krishna decides.
uh, so I had two questions. The first one, simple question. Maybe I missed it, but where's the source for this? Like the Mahabharata, like if we want to know the full story, where can we read?
Which one?
Um, of the Mahabharata, like it was there like a text that Srila Prabhupada wrote that I don't know of, because I think only in the Bhagavad Gita is the discussion between Krishna and Arjuna, but for the entire, like the backstory of the Mahabharata, where can we read?
You want to know where to get a copy of Mahabharata? That's what you're asking?
Or yeah,
That's what
yeah,
you're asking.
yeah, or who's written by?
Well, it is written by Vyasadeva.
Okay,
It's part of the Bhagavad Gita is in the middle part of a big epic, and the
yeah,
big epic is Mahabharata, and Vyasadeva is the compiler of both, or Mahabharata, of which Bhagavad Gita is at the center. So it's a history. It's an itihasa, and the compiler is Vyasadeva. Now, your question, where can you get a copy? Well, you make me laugh. Make me laugh because uh, do you know Hridayananda Maharaj? You've heard his name?
maybe I'm
Maybe.
not too familiar.
He's a Sanskrit scholar. When Prabhupada departed this world, Hridayananda Maharaj and Gopi Pranadana Prabhu and others that were Sanskrit scholars completed the Bhagavatam from Canto 10, Chapter 13 on. They completed. Hridayananda Maharaj is a Sanskrit scholar. So one of the projects that he took up was making a rendering in readable English of Mahabharata. And he stopped. And he stopped because there's no such thing as a verifiable text of Mahabharata. And I'm repeating what he says. So this is like not my idea, it's his idea. And he, I've heard it 6 times. Even Madhvacharya says there are so many corrupt versions of Mahabharata. There is no such thing as a manuscript of Mahabharata. So a good version for you and me and most of us is Krishna Dharma, the rendering of Mahabharata. And it pretty much follows, the Ganguly version. Ganguly is a Bengali name. He was a translator, and he translated Mahabharata. And the English is like ancient, thou and thus and thee and they, all that. So Old English. Krishna Dharma Mahabharata. That's a place you can go, and it's pretty close. But there's things that he did the best he could, but who knows? Because he spent a lot of as Sridhar Maharaj is planning to do, but he kind of like threw his hands up in the air and said, "There's no such thing as." So he did something else instead.
Okay, thank you. And my second question was about the chivalrous rasa. Um, are there any other notable examples of this chivalrous rasa between Krishna?
Yeah. Let me bring them to mind because I thought about this before we came. Well, they're different in the behavior of the cowherd boys. There was some chivalrous rasa. For example, because you're looking for some for examples. Sudama was when the boys would wrestle, then Sudama was commonly paired up with Krishna, and Sudama would win. Sridham, he would win. So Sridham would speak chivalrous words to Krishna. Oh, you, people say you're such a powerful person, but you're a pushover. No, it's like chivalrous talk. And there's other examples in um, the dealings with uh, Jarasandha. Krishna would sometimes speak chivalrous words to Jarasandha and then send him home. So chivalrous talk.
So, for example, the demons of Vrindavan, would when they come to fight Krishna, would they be in that rasa?
They weren't purposely trying to give Krishna pleasure. They wanted to kill Krishna. That's not chivalrous rasa. They're demons.
So, is there a rasa that they would be in, or
Unfavorable. Yeah, unfavorable. It's a nice question. And if it's not, then what is it? So it's a relationship with Krishna that gives Krishna enjoyed. I mean, it's a nice those those devotees that have Prabhupada memories. They would appreciate when Prabhupada was listening to or reading Krishna book. When it came to the killing of demons, when Krishna killed the demons, he would laugh heartily. It was joyful. It wasn't like heavy. It was heavy-hearted because Krishna was enjoying, and he was enjoying that Krishna was enjoying. So Krishna's enjoying that, but it wasn't the purpose on the other side wasn't that Krishna should become happy by giving him you know a good fight. But I'd like to pursue your question. If it is it chivalrous rasa or of a certain type? Anyone in the room have an answer to that question? Yeah, yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, because they were in the role of demons, but that wasn't my question. My question was, is there some statement somewhere that those various personalities who came as demons and confronted Krishna, and Krishna had battle with them, and Krishna defeated them, is that considered chivalrous rasa? That was the question. You don't know. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll take a homework assignment on. uh, I'll let you know. In fact, I'll let him know, and then he can inform others as soon as I get something. But it's probably going to have to be after the weekend because the weekend is upon us soon.
thank you, Maharaj.
The Japa retreat. Okay. Nothing else. Srila Prabhupada ki